Since February 1st, 2020, the United Kingdom is no longer a member state of the European Union, but a third country. The Withdrawal Agreement provides for a transition period that ends on December 31st. Until then, EU law will apply in its entirety in the United Kingdom. The EU and the UK will negotiate a new partnership agreement during the transition period, including a free trade area. That was intended, but it doesn't look that good at the moment. However, it's not certain that such an agreement will be concluded and enter into force at the end of the transition period. In any event, such an agreement would create relationships that differ significantly in terms of market access conditions from the UK's participation in the internal market, the EU Customs Union, and the VAT and excise area. For this reason, all interested parties, in particular economic operators, must be informed of the legal situation that will exist after the end of the transition period. And for that, the EU published a lot of communications and are updating them, so it's also all on their website. Under EU law, a contract that a consumer enters into with an entrepreneur based in another country who conducts his business in some way on the country of residence of the consumer, generally the law of the country in which the consumer has his habitual residence, applies. It is possible to choose another law. Such a choice must not, however, deprive the consumer of the protection granted to him by non-mandatory legal provisions of the state of his habitual residence. On this basis, the courts of the EU member states will continue to apply the EU rules on consumer protection, even if the entrepreneur is located in the UK. These include in particular the provisions of the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, the Consumer Rights Directive, the Unfair Terms and Consumer Contracts Directive, the Consumer Sales and Guarantees Directive, the Price Indication Directive, and the Package Travel Directive. With regards to individual actions brought by an EU consumer after the end of the transition period in a court of an EU member state against a trader resident in the United Kingdom who has conducted his commercial activity in the member state of residence of the consumer, the withdrawal does not apply effects on the international jurisdiction of this court for disputes in consumer matters pursuant to Article 17 and the letters A to C of the EU Regulation 1215/2012-17. In these cases, the EU rules on jurisdiction apply, which allow the consumer to sue the trader in the EU member state in which the consumer is domiciled, regardless of whether the trader is domiciled in the EU or in a third country. However, in case of legal proceedings instituted after the end of the transition period, the recognition and enforcement of judgments of the court of an EU member state in the UK and vice versa are subject to the national rules of the UK or the relevant member state. The EU rules that ensure the availability of out-of-court dispute resolution and facilitate access to online dispute resolutions will no longer apply to the UK after the end of the transition period, and the EU online dispute resolution platform is for complaints against the UK established entrepreneurs no longer available. As for public enforcement actions, that means to bring about the cessation of a business practice, the regulations of the EU will no longer apply to the UK after the end of the transition period. This means that after the end of that period, the UK authorities are no longer required by EU law to cooperate on cross-border claims. In addition, after the end of the transition period, EU rules that allow qualified entities designated by EU member states to bring injunctions in another member state will no longer apply to the UK either. Under EU law, tour operators of package tours based in the EU are obliged to provide security for the reimbursement of payments made by travelers and the return of travelers in the event of the tour operator's insolvency. Not in organizers established in the EU who sell or offer for sale to consumers in the EU or direct such activities in any way to the EU must also provide such insolvency protection in each of the member states in which they sell package tours. Offers one-on-one organizers established in third countries do not sell package tours to consumers in the EU and do not direct their sales activities towards the EU, that means passive sales. EU law, which provides for mandatory insolvency protection, does not apply. This means that in cases where the UK-based tour operator does not offer package tours to the EU and does not direct its sales to the EU, the bankruptcy protection provided by EU law does not apply to UK-based tour operators' bankruptcies, which occur after the end of the transition period. And after the end of the transition period, EU rules that provide for the mutual recognition of bankruptcy insurance taken out under the requirements of a promoter's home country will no longer apply to bankruptcy protection taken out under UK requirements. This means that after the end of the transition period, the EU member states are no longer automatically obliged to recognize the insolvency protection provided in the UK as meeting the requirements for bankruptcy protection for package tour operators under the articles for the EU. After the end of the transition period, EU rules on air passenger rights will no longer apply to passengers flying from an airport in the UK to an airport in the territory of an EU member state, unless the operating air carrier is an air carrier of the Union. That means he has an operating license issued by an EU member state. This means that despite the UK's withdrawal from the EU, the passengers' rights granted under EU law will continue to apply to passengers departing from the UK on a community air carrier to an airport on the territory of an EU member state. However, after the end of the transition period, the passenger rights granted under EU law will not apply to flights with non-EU airlines departing from the UK to the EU. EU rules granting disabled air travelers and those with reduced mobility special rights will no longer apply to disabled people and people with reduced mobility departing from, in transit or on airport in the UK after the end of the transition period if they arrive there. However, certain rights, such as air carrier assistance, continue to apply to passengers departing from an airport in the UK to an airport in the EU if the operating air carrier is a community air carrier. EU rules on passenger rights will continue to apply to passengers on and after the end of the transition period if the port of embarkation is in the EU or in the UK, provided the port of disembarkation is in the EU and the service is provided by a carrier who is established on the territory of a member state or who offers passenger transport services to or from a member state, which is called a union carrier. EU rules on bus travelers' rights will continue to apply on and after the end of the transition period to passengers on regular services from or to the UK, where the passenger's place of departure or arrival is in the EU and the scheduled distance is 250 kilometers and more. EU regulations on the rights of passengers will continue to apply to rail passengers transport services in the territory of the Union on and after the end of the transition period, provided that the railway undertaking is in accordance with Article 17 of the EU directive dealing with it, and that the EU Council and the EU Parliament created in case of a single European railway area. It's quite complicated, I know, and that's why general information is available on the Commission's consumer and passenger rights websites, and the relevant pages will be updated with further information when required. That is why I just want to give an overlook, and there is even more I could have told you. And there's one thing I want to tell you: YouTube has just activated membership on my channel. If you're interested in some exclusive content in the future, have a look on the join button right under the video. But if you want to know more about European politics right now, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!